boot camp materials.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yes. So it's gonna be called. I went ahead and saved you guys time by I went ahead and put it in the chat for you guys too. Let me see if I can turn this off. Yeah. So you guys are welcome to open up this case study file, right? I have it set up here, but there's several different things that I want you guys to bring awareness to. Number one, I want you guys to click on Primetime Pizza Business. No, I have people. There we go.
Okay.
Yo, mic check. So as we go through, I'm going to read the kind of case study to us. But Primetime Pizza Inc., a locally owned and operated pizza shop with a reputation of high quality. All customer orders utilize a system of phone ordering as well as the website online option. All pizzas are custom made to the customer's specifications and delivered. There's no on-site dining, meaning that, they can either, to go pick up or they will get delivery. Now, Mr. Tony Pepperoni owns this role model business. He has heavily invested in the prime business location, contemporary, well-lighted gas front building, the finest gas-fire pizza ovens, refrigeration equipment, and customer systems or computer systems, excuse me, that are used to enhance the effectiveness of the operation. The organization has earned a good reputation in the community and has been operating profitably for over 10 years. They're delivered by auto, bicycle, or motorbike utilizing prime time or part-time delivery people who work for tips. All delivery personnel are considered legally independent contractors and subsequently are not covered by any liability insurance. The company guarantees a 30-minute delivery time. There's a flexible staff or full-time employees within the organization who are well-trained and experienced in pizza preparation. The employees are systematically cross-trained and flexible. Their duties are, an order taker, cash register, credit card processor, delivery dispatcher, pizza dough maker, topping preparation, a pizza chef, a utility person, someone who is cleaning and pizza box inventory. And then they have Primetime Inc., where they offer one size of pizza and a full range of toppings, as well as 2 other crusts, thin and regular. Their regularly often pizza specials are often applicable customer discounts for ball games and holiday events to be responsive to the market. Over the past 10 years, Primetime Pizza Inc. has enjoyed great business stability and a favorable profit return. They have a favorable debt ratio and paying the staff a good competitive wage rate. At this time, they do not intend to grow their business beyond the original concept of a one-shop operation with a stable customer base of local people. Over the past 18-month periods, sales have declined. There are 2 other pizza shops operating within the community, and Primetime Pizza Inc. has responded to this business trend with discounts and advertising, but there has been no response in sales volumes. Mr. Pepperoni is profoundly perplexed by the drops in profit. He operated a simple pizza shop for 10 years, but due to business problems, he has begun keeping some of the data for past 12 months in an attempt to analyze the situation. And I feel like he's given up. So he wants to hire a team of Six Sigma experts to analyze his problems with profits and recommended corrective actions. So we're kind of the team of Six Sigma professionals here. But Mr. Pepperoni's brand a new spicy product, right? So I want to give you, let me back up a little bit and give you the facts of his business within this study time period. And so where I'm going with this is when I go into industries, I'll have some initial, preliminary data, but I'm going in and I'm finding out more information as I go along. So some significant business facts and events within the study period. You have a change in pepperoni brands to a new spicier product. One of our delivery drivers backed into a mailbox while making a delivery. Primetime paid $250 in damages. The owner was very angry and voiced his opinion to everybody in the neighborhood who would listen. A food surveyor, I think that's who that's supposed to be, increased our pepperoni price, or purveyor, excuse me, it is purveyor, increased our pepperoni price by 0.15 cents per pound. The Super Bowl Sunday pizzas were sold at 15% discount all day. A driver got into a cuss fight argument with a customer, claimed he was shortchanged. The incident was witnessed by many in his neighborhood, and some who were regular customers. Our building insurance premium increased by 18%. There's a major university with a high-rise dorm located 15 miles from Primetime Pizza Shop. These dorms account for a significant number of pizza deliveries. Due to this discount, Primetime does not serve the university. One of our drivers was charged with impaired driving, boozing and cruising. During the course of a delivery, we terminated his employment and sent another pizza to the customer, resulting in a late delivery of 2.5 hours. So that customer was very angry about the incident and reported it in the local newspaper. There's a 24-hour call center located 12 miles from the shop. There are over 2,000 employees in the call center, and they order pizza pretty frequently. We sponsor a full-page advertisement in the local high school paper for around $200 a year. A competitive pizza shop opened 2 blocks away from our location with extensive startup advertising and discounts. Many of our customers apparently took our business there. We started a time-driven program for pizza pickup. If your pizza is not ready for pickup within 20 minutes of being called, it's free. We strive for an 18-minute target time and have not given away any pizzas yet. 3 customers complained of illness after eating primetime pizzas one evening, resulting in trips to the ER. This incident was printed in the newspaper. One of our ovens had electrical problems, which resulted in a 48-hour downtime for the store. Customers were informed of the incident when they tried to order pizzas. Many of them vowed to take their business elsewhere. No drivers showed up for their shift due to vacation. So we had to put the counter delivery into delivery cars, which resulted in a great deal of confusion and late deliveries. We had an attempted robbery. So we had an attempted robbery at the store, which made the local newspaper. The robber was apprehended by the police while attempted robbery was in progress. The competitor ran a week-long special So a separate event. Competitor ran a week-long special. 20% discounts on all delivery pizza. We ran a special discount of 25% coupon for local high school football games, which resulted in a profound misprint. The coupons were printed to read 75% off. Subsequently, the coupons were not honored and many students expressed anger. We experienced a 12% increase in our electrical watt rate by our power company. Our front glass was damaged by vandalism when a brick was thrown in through the night. The damage was less than our insurance deductible, and we paid out $515 to have the window replaced. We're almost done, guys. We offer a gluten-free pizza for an increased pizza price of $2 a pizza. Change cheese toppings to a low-fat product to conform to market trends. We stopped professional oven calibration service due to cost-cutting programs. Experienced difficulty in hiring delivery or personnel due to new bicycle age restrictions. And they changed the pizza box supplier to save money on each unit. And they hired 2 new part-time people for weekend cleanup and utility work in the store. They began limited advertising in the local newspaper, increased new, larger electric signs in front of the store, and they take online pizza orders to speed processing and reduce that phone utilization. And they started a 10% discount for Monday pizza orders. Whew! I am so glad to be through with that case study. So, reading it wise, right? There's a few things that stuck out in my mind as a Six Sigma professional. One of the last few things that he talked about, let's see. It's something about the oven calibration, right? Stop the professional oven calibration due to a cost-cutting program. Now, that's one of the things that like red flags my mind right away as an individual. If your product and the ability that you have on your to cook your product or the equipment, you stop the calibration on it, and that means you're going to stop the controlled process that you may have, and it might not be a good process, or you might have calibration issues, and we'll see throughout the course where you'll have a shortage in the electrical kilowattage, and you could have an electrical fire, thus leading to other accidents. Now, as you're going through, you saw a lot of PR issues. So, the customer's getting into it, or the customer getting into it with the pizza delivery driver, right? Now, I bring this up as I need to give you guys a certain focus point for this project, right? When we look at this, this is a lot of information, and oftentimes as Six Sigma professionals, we are overwhelmed with that. So what do? We start breaking. So we start breaking up the questions, or we start looking up the metrics, right? So we look at that quantitative analysis. And so if you guys would, I'd love for you guys to join me. If you'll go back up and open up your case study for the primetime pizza business case. If you guys could open up, it's called Pizza Case Data. Oh. So I'm going to delete this Pareto chart or pie chart, or excuse me, the bar chart for us to look at this data, right? I have this information here, so that way when you guys download it and you do the activity, it's a reference to go back to. So as you're looking at this, right, I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. You have your month, you have the number of pizzas sold throughout the last 12 years, or 12 months, excuse me, the revenue. You then have the 4 issues in the organization, and you have the total complaints. So if you see here, this is essentially a formula that leads to the total complaints numbers. At the bottom here, you have your late deliveries, crust problems, pepperoni, cheese, and the total. And these right here are the total for each problem, essentially. You have the defect percentage, and you have the DPMO. In previous lessons, we knew DPMO as defective parts per million opportunities. So essentially, we said if we were to do this the same time, if we were to look at this data and say, this is the DPMO, if we have this ratio of products and we run this 1,000,000 times, this would be the number of defects we would have. DPMO is a good cost of poor quality metric, right? I usually label it as red because it allows me to say this is, the cost of the organization. This is what the impact is of the problem. As you're looking at this, right, there's a few things I want you guys to do as activities that are going to help you guys with the statistics behind it. We have the mean and standard deviation, right? Now, this is a sample size because remember, this is the only data he actually captured. So we can take this and look at this and say, okay, we're going to use standard deviation of a sample size to understand the dynamics of this process. So the first thing that I want to do is calculate the mean. I'm going to go through and set that up as average and highlight B2 to B13, right? This then becomes the formula, highlights it, your average, that's B2, B13. Make sure you don't have B14 in there because that's going to mess up your average. The next thing I want you to do is look at this data and figure out what the standard deviation of the number of pizzas sold is. We're going to use the sample size calculation equals. We'll use that stdev.s formula. And just highlight the same data. When we look at this information, a few other things that kind of pop in my mind that we can do something called a Pareto chart to find what the biggest issue is on the organization. I'll show you guys how to do that. But essentially, if you have these 4 categories here, right? The way I did this is I highlighted it and I held Control or Command depending on what computer you have. I go to Insert. I can create a Pareto chart off of here of this data. So I'll do that again so you guys can see it. Insert, create a histogram, and create a Pareto chart. Now, this allows me to create a focus point for our project, right? You know, what's costing our organization the most amount of money, right? We can see this, and maybe we want to take it and just highlight the data and move it over just for a little bit. We'll create a new spreadsheet, and this will help you with data entry. So I'm creating a new spreadsheet. I'm just highlighting the data. I'm coming over here to sheet 2. I can call this a Pareto analysis. But essentially, I took the top issues and I created a histogram. Sure. Well, how does this help me? Well, again, this is going to give me a focus point for my research. If I look at my research as a standpoint of this quantitative data is showcasing what the highest loss is in an organization. I can then come back to my case study. When I look at my case study, I want to kind of focus my research because that Pareto analysis is going to give us that ability to hone our skills and say, where is the cost margin happening, right? Where are we losing the most amount of value in our organization? So late deliveries was a key issue. So I probably would want to go through this case study and I'd want to highlight, you know, what is a essentially revolves around late delivery. Well, I know the DUI is probably one of those factors, right? I also have other issues in the organization. So maybe I want to bring that over. So we have that qualitative data that we're bringing over and kind of listing the problems in the organization, right? So we have that. Maybe looking at some other components of it, looking for any type of late deliveries. Hold on just one second. All right, guys. So one of the things that I want to look at here are issues that maybe revolve around late deliveries, right? So that kind of gives us a focus point too for our research and why we need to have effective change. Now, one thing I want you guys to keep in mind that we may need to collect a range of data, right? So I want you guys, so in the chat, you guys are going to help me, but we're going to create some pizza delivery times, right? So we'll have a list of pizza delivery times. And we're going to record the data in regards to 30 data points and recording the pizza time in minutes, right? So what I want you guys to do is put a range of pizza delivery times into the chat. So this can be, the ballpark range we're looking for is 30 minutes, right? But obviously we're not going to be exact. So I want you guys to give me some data points in the chat box. All right, so we've got 42, we've got 27, we've got 28. Come on, guys. 33, 15, 18, 45, 27, 8 minutes, 14 minutes. Let's go on the heavier side because we're showcasing the late deliveries. 55 minutes, 50 minutes, 25 minutes. We're almost there, guys. 37, 39, 62, 47, 38, 41. 29, 50, 42, 3, 28, and one more. 36. So as I'm looking at this data, I'm going to highlight it and put it in the chat for you guys too. You guys should have that data in the chat. Well, the first thing I want to do is look at what my natural tolerance is, right? Remember, we looked at that as, okay, we have a minimum value and a maximum value, right? We know that is also LCL and UCL. So I can put my minimum value in there. I put my maximum value in there. Now, that's a huge range, right? So as you guys are looking at this, what's another figure? You guys put it in the chat. What else should I know? Yeah, Bruce. average, your average of your data set. Your standard deviation. Now, think about this from a statistical standpoint. And we'll go ahead and do the range too. We'll do a sample size standard deviation. Oop. Right, you do that sample size standard deviation, our sigma value. That lets us know the space in between the sigmas. As you're looking at this process-wise, I want you to think about what an outlier is. Typically, an outlier is anything that's 3 sigmas away, right? And what do I mean by that? Is if I have my average, and let's say that this is my average right here. 36.83. I have my sigma -1 sigma value. Essentially, that's just going to be the average subtract whatever the deviation is. And we'll do the same thing here. Let's do 1 sigma here. This is going to be the average plus the deviation. So these values then become the range or the tolerance level that we have minute wise. And it kind of gives us a glimpse at our window of our delivery times, right? As I look at what a outlier is, typically an outlier is anything that falls, 2 standard deviations away from the average. But thinking about how much this data set of that 8 is away from all of those numbers, I would also consider that an outlier, right? Typically, what I would do is omit that from the study. And the reason being is like your average is going to be like your average is going to be a lot different when you delete that. Your variables are going to be different as well. But for this study, we'll leave it in there just so you can see the impact an outlier has on a case study, right? Now, these were random data points that we suggested as a class, right? One of the reason being is I wanted to show you a range you can have, right? And how you can look at it as a Six Sigma professional standpoint. Now, one of the reasons I didn't put a 3 sigma value in is there was no way we could get a negative like it's still going to cost us time to make pizza. So you can see the shift in the process, right? And we start to see a lot of our data points still cluster around within 1 standard deviation of our average. If you look at a bulk of our majority, typically a normal distribution says that 60% of our data falls within, or 68% of our data falls within 1 standard deviation of our data point. And we can see that as we start to look at the data. And you start to see how we can form a distribution. Yeah, it's just going to be each variable is subtracted by the standard deviation. So as you start to look at this, these become our, our values. We want to strive to get that, basically when we look at this, we want to look at this process and say, hey, I want to be able to control this process a little bit more. Like that range. If I highlight these values and I create a control chart, if I look at this scatter plot, this becomes a control mechanism, right? Like I want to be able to control the variation in our process delivery times. Now, obviously, there's going to be factors associated with that. Yes, Marianne.
Sorry, I have to unmute. I got a little bit lost because I was busy taking notes on the calculations that you have under the standard deviations for the -2, -1. Is it too much to go back over that?
No,
or am I the only?
Yeah. So I'll just go back a little bit just for you guys. So I have my average of my data set, right? Hey, that's okay. You see how when one person's brave enough to ask the question, it helps everybody else? So I'm okay with this. I think it's perfectly normal to have questions, especially when you start looking at this from a standpoint of how it can help you in your career. Perfectly normal. So I have my average here, right? My standard deviations are essentially z-scores, right? Now, a z-score is a normal distribution score, right? If I have something that's called the empirical rule, it allows me, hold on, let me pull this up real fast. I'm trying to find like a really good photo for you guys to see it, okay? Do you guys remember when I was talking about the frequency tally, right? And one of the videos in normal distribution, I talk about the pizza delivery driver getting pulled over for going over the speed limit. And the officer has a collection of data, right? We're essentially doing the same thing here. Now, in this process, right, I could measure these variables and find what the average is. I could also find what the space in between these variables, which in this case, it's just 1, right, for the speed limit. Now, z-scores are a way we can look at our process and understand the variation in it. So if I go through, so if I look at this variable here, right, and I have my z-scores, right? I have my variable here, which is my probability percentage. This is the percentage that I'm likely to hit that target range, right? The z-scores are the space you have in between, right? If I'm to look at this, I can also read this 0, 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, -3. And these are associated as sigma values, just so you guys can see that. I just didn't have a lot of space there. Right, you'll have a negative z-score value, which that negative z-score allows us to see the distribution from this standpoint, right? What's the likelihood of me not making or hitting that mark? And that is in here. Now you'll notice here, you have your variable, and everything under this distribution is 100%, right? So we can use this as a way to understand z-scores, right? That in this range, it allows us to bring a standardized score back to a raw, or bring a raw score and turn it into a standardized dynamic for us. And I went through this in the videos last week where we talked about normal distribution. We also talked about z-scores in there. When we go on and talk about the Excel prep for it, let's see. Essentially, I've created the same thing. This is essentially my 1 sigma value. Instead of -1 here, it's going to be that distribution of 14.4. And you see how that variation, well, I can build it here and make it look a little bit like this. Now, this isn't perfectly average. This isn't going to be a normal distribution just because we see a lot more leniency to the heavier end, right? And we can see that with the collection of data that we have. So I have my z-scores. I have what my range value is. And I also have what my LCL is, my UCL, and understanding what that variation in the process is. Now, using Six Sigma approaches, we aim to standardize a practice, right? So if I said I came in and I wanted to showcase what the current state is, right? I could showcase these delivery times. I could showcase this range of data. I could even come in here and create a graph of how I wanted to present the data fluctuation. I probably want to show it as a scatter plot, so that way I can show the spread in the data. Now, looking at this and understanding the analytical components of this, we can help Mr. Pepperoni improve his process. One of the things that we talk about in Lean Six Sigma are two different approaches to the analyze phase. Now, root cause analysis and things like that, we get into a little bit later. We'll talk about that in a next lesson. But we're focusing on the statistical components of this, right? This variation in spread can lead to ambiguity when it comes to timelines for delivery. So we want to come to this organization and control these variation in their process. So I put together something, and I'll go ahead and create it through here. You're welcome to type it. And we're right at the hour mark. So let's take a 10-minute break and we'll come right back to this, okay? And I'll leave this up for you guys and call it delivery time.
I'm sorry for the sigma, the all of the I understand like the how we got negative sigma one, the standard deviation minus the average,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't understand the other numbers. Like, can you pick any of these numbers and you could pick a sigma for each variable?
You talking about right here?
Yeah. Well, not the yeah.
After we come back from the break, I'll recap z-scores and go into it a little bit more detail.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was in the video, but I'll just recap it so that way we're all on the same page, okay?
Okay.
Plus,
Thanks.
it would be good for the video too.
Hey, Zach, when we come back from the break, I'm still having trouble wrapping my brain around the one sigma I understand is from the average minus the standard deviation, but how about the two minus sigma? What's the formula for that?
That's so it's just two variable. So like it would be 2 times standard deviation, subtracting it. Because this becomes then our range. Like our our scope, or what we say, in the videos we talked about the empirical rule and how that helps you understand the standard deviation portion of it. I'll go back over that and then I'll come back into this and reflect it back to the study. Okay.
All right, thanks. So it's just 28 minus 2 times the standard deviation minus the average
Yeah.
to get. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Zach, leave.
All right, guys. So one thing I wanted to go back over and kind of recap on are Z-scores. Okay. Z-scores are an incredible asset that helps us understand a distribution and the kind of space in between, if you will. If I look at Z-scores, right? I can give this to you guys too. You also have one in your file under statistics. It may look a little bit different. Hold on, I can pull it up for you.
What up?
I would rather use this. I really want to use, this is the one I really want to use. So let me give you 1 second. I'm going to do this real fast for you guys. So I'm going to put this in for you guys. So if you guys look in the chat, I've given you guys this. There's another file under your statistics folder. I'd rather use this one because this one's going to be more closely related to what you need to know in the industry. I provided this in the chat. But you guys remember probability being like essentially if I roll a dice, I have a 1 out of 6 chance, right? Or 16.67% chance, right? If I flip a coin, it's 50-50, right? Well, as we're looking at a distribution, right? You have your 0 value, right? That's your mute point. That's our average. That's our baseline where we're trying to hit at target wise. Right. And then you have your essentially it's called probability density. Right. And how your process dictates what your distribution looks like. Well, Z-scores, they allow us to look at our process and say, okay, well, this is the likelihood I'm going to hit that mark. Now, a couple things that I want you to take note of as we're doing this. Number one, we have a distribution. If I have a Z-score of, let's say, negative, or well, I'll go with an easier one first. Let's say I have a Z-score of 2. I have my 0 here. That means that I have a sigma value that takes into account what is it, 0.4772. This is from 0 to whatever Z-score you have. Now, keep in mind, I still have a distribution of this that I have to account for. that's going to be 0.5. So when you look at a z-score of essentially 2 sigma, you get a probability of, what is it, 0.9772, right? So you have your distribution and your probability of the positive side of it. Then you're adding that 50.5 into it, which accounts for the negative distribution. How you read the chart essentially is, if I say, hey, I have a z-score of 2, you're going to go down to 2. To what? Okay, 2.00. And I'm going to pair them together, right? When I pair them together, I get 0.42. That's only from 0 to the z value. Well, I still need to take into account the 0.5 that's on this distribution. So that's why I added them together to get 0.9772. If I was to look at this and I say, find me a z-score of 3, I want you guys to tell me what the p-value is and put it in the chat. So when I look at this, one of the other things that I get is what? Essentially, I'm going to go down. I'm going to find what 3.0 is, 0.00, 0.4987 plus whatever the left half of the distribution is. So I get like 499.87. Now those z values help us understand our data, right? If we're looking at it, z-scores make it easier to understand distributions as we can base it on a scale. I'll let you write that down. No matter what our distribution is, it can let us think of it as taking that raw standardization, that raw score, and turning it into something that we can understand. So when we're taking raw data and understanding it better, we look at z-scores as a way to improve our process, right? If I tell you is a standard performance level in most organizations is somewhere between 3 to 5 sigma standard deviations. This, once we know probability, we can find what defects are, right? What's the likelihood of a defect happening? When we think about Z-scores, they're standardized scores that help us interpret data. When we think of standardization as grade point GPA, right? Grade point average, that's standardized and based on a normal scale. Our credit score based on a scale. Now, to calculate Z-scores, right? I showed you the theory behind them, but now we're going to understand how to apply that practice. Is we have this formula. It's Z equals X minus mu divided by sigma. This is always what we're going to consider a observation value, or a viewing, or just a data point that we're going to use out of our data, right? This is typically your X is always going to be one variable. You can have it where if you brought a bunch of data and averaged it together and compared it to the average of another set of data, but that's not what this is for. This is typically to say, hey, I have a collection of tire pressures, right? I've got the list of variables. Okay, I'm going to select one of those variables, and that's going to be my X value. My average is going to be comparing that X value to the average. So the average of this tire pressure, that's going to be the average of it, right? We know the average as X1 plus X2 divided by whatever N is, right? We represent that average as an average collection of data. We divide that by sigma, which is the variation in that tire pressure, right? So trying to show you the theory behind it. Right now, I want you to take it as Z equals X minus mu divided by sigma, or our standard deviation of a sample size. When I look at these variables, right, we can use this in real practice, right? One of my very first jobs was on an assembly line, right? I worked as a quality engineer for a company that manufactured engine control units for Honda, right? I may have been an intern at that point, I can't remember. But we would manufacture these engine control units that did all the diagnostics of vehicles. And essentially, my job in it was to quality test these and see how they compared. And so I would do different type of sampling procedures, right? We would X-ray them all day, see if there's a defect and compare it. I sometimes had no idea what I was looking at because I was so new to the process. But over the years, I got more accustomed to it and understanding the thought and theory behind quality management practices. We're trying to inspect what we expect, right? And so bringing Z-scores into life, I looked at the variation in the process of creating these engine control units. So I want you to use the Z-score formula I gave you and use that chart in combination, right? We manufacture engine control units with a thickness diameter of 0.45 millimeters, right? I can also associate that right off the bat as my X value. We have the following variations, 0.42 and 0.01. So essentially, you're going to go through and build that formula and solve for Z. So when you do that, you should get a z-score of what? Z equals what? All right, so we got 3, right? Go through, we set this up, solve for z, we get 3. We then went into 3 and found a probability. So what was my probability that I found? What was my p-value based off of finding z? Let's put that in the chat. Keep in mind, with that chart that I gave you, look at that top variation in the process. So like, as I'm looking at this, right? Keep in mind, this only has 1/2 of the distribution. All you have to remember is to add that other half of the distribution, that 0.5, and you'll be solid. So find the variable and then find that that p-value and then add 0.5 to it. So as I'm looking at my distribution, I can see this and say, okay, I have a variable of 3. All right. It's about 0.5, or that's a terrible drawing. Let me do this a little bit better, guys. There you go. I still have how much on this side? How much do I have on that side left? From 0.5.
%50.
Okay, so I have my variable 50% here, right? But where I'm asking for is right in here. If I know this is all together 99.87%, what's my variable right here? What's my missing link right here?
The 0.13%.
Yes, sir. So as long as you know, when you look at the distribution and you can see the distribution altogether is 100%, right? Your z-scores allow us to look at the efficiency of our process. And we can see with the precision, what's the probability we're going to be hitting that target region. Now, I want you guys to go ahead and open back up your pizza business case.
Zach, before you go too far, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, sir.
So out of the 99.87%, what portion of our data would be changing to get to the 0.13%? Like, I'm not understanding how we would get to that 0.1, that extra percentage.
Boom. This is why I was about to brag about myself. I felt really good after that interview, but I don't want to come off as like arrogant and dumb. I just was really trying to give myself some props. But this is kind of why I love teaching this class, because I get to really kind of showcase different scenarios. What's your favorite sport, Donovan?
Football.
All right. Now, I was somewhat what we would call a bench warmer in high school, and then I didn't get athletic until I joined the military. But let's say we're doing a percentage looking at touchdowns, right? I'm looking at no, I want to say it just a little bit different. All right, we have our field goal. We're kicking that field goal. Right? Oh, man, that kind of just looks like a turd. It doesn't really look like a football, but you guys get the gist, right? I have my kicker that's kicking that football, right? I have a probability here, right? Let's say out of 10 times I kick the football, I only make it let's say I got to step up my game and I'm not making it to the NFL anytime soon. But I kick that 4 out of 10 times. Okay. What's my probability here?
Of making it 40% as of right now.
40%. Okay. Now, I'm gonna leave my cute little goal and field goal there. Now let's do this as a process control, right? So we have multiple phases and days that we do this process, right? So we'll have the way I'm gonna list this as probability for right now. So day one, and then going through all the way to day 10. All right. So we know that is 40%. Well, actually, let me do it out of this way. We'll say 4 out of 10. I want to do 4 out of 10. 4 out of 10. 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10. I had a really bad day. And let's say, right. So kind of day 1 through 10 type setup here. Right. I can create a probability distribution off of this, right? I can look at this and also say, okay, if I know that these are my probabilities, I then can label on each day, how many did I miss out of it, right? So 6. Kind of just identifying and taking accountability of our metrics. Right, just thinking about it from that mindset of, okay, just my positive and negative standpoints of where were my deficiencies at so I can improve later. All right, I got this from day 10, right? I can collect this data and I can figure out what was my overall, let's say overall probability. So when we average all this together, what was my overall probability?
I'm getting 4.5 or 45%.
45%. Let's see. All right. Now, find 0.45 on this percentage. Where's your z-score at, roughly?
Point 1736.
What was it? 0.1 or 1 point?
Yeah, 0.1736.
So if I look at 45% in here, right? I'm somewhere. Oh man, that's really close. Okay, so like
Oh, I see what you did. I was
a
backwards.
1.6 sigma z-score value. So maybe like a 0.6 right there. So, I mean, there's like essentially, if I'm using, these as even numbers here, how much it's like a 5% chance. So what we found was the probability, like your yield percentage, that's your quality rate, right? Your yield percentage in Six Sigma should be somewhere around 99.9997%. But for this, we looked at that dude kicking the field goals, and he only made it 45% of the time. So I came in here and I tried to find a variable that was really close to 45%, which if this 0.4495 and 0.4505, they're the same distance apart. So in theory, it should be like 1.65 and 5 because I'm splitting the difference here between these variables. But I just kind of rounded that about, just kind of made it simple numbers for us. But from that probability that we found, I then found my distribution or z-score value, right? Which is at 1.6. And then that I was about to ask you, what is my value of error? That's that kind of remainder that we have on the distribution. And that's how I want you to kind of see it throughout. So z-scores allow us to kind of find our probability in here, right? We can find our probability of hitting that mark. Just note, as you're looking at this and you're looking at whatever distribution table you're saying, that you're looking at what 0 and the shaded region is equal to. So as you're looking at this becomes a distribution that we can understand and visualize to improve our process. Let me show you another example. I think it's going to help us out. let's say we work at Joe's Pizza and Pasta, right? And Joe's Pizza and Pasta, we're slamming down pizzas, right? The mean for our preparation bake time for pizza delivery is 19 minutes with a standard deviation of 2 minutes. What's your performance level, the Z value of a 23-minute prep time? So I can associate this as my X. So when you do that, Z equals X minus mu divided by sigma, you should get a 2 value. That 2 value then brings in a probability. Where's it at? Ooh, you know what? I should show you guys. I should show you how. Do you guys want to learn like the shortcut I use to do this on an everyday basis? Like the real way? Like, all right.
We like shortcuts.
Do
All
that
right.
first.
So, all right, this is the way I want to teach you guys this, because like if I don't have Minitab, I use like my Excel knowledge to help me do industry projects, man. So let's call this Z score calculator. All right. So let's come in here. I'm gonna build a formula at first, right? Stuff we know. X, shit, not D. X minus mu sigma and my Z score, right? I like to color stuff as the way you guys will see it. So X minus mu close parentheses divided by sigma value. Okay, that's blue. That's red. That's orange. Where did I get orange from? Purple, excuse me. You know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stick to it the way it is here. So in that variable, right? What was my X variable in the pizza case?
23.
23. What's my mu variable?
19.
Yeah. And then what was my standard deviation? 2?
2.
Okay. Now, This is going to be called calculated probability. So I want to show you how to do this to just bypass like documents and like all that. Like if you know this, this helps you tremendously. But I'm going to come in here. Oh, problem, excuse me, p-value. And so what was the p-value you guys got for it?
Can you put the chart back up again? Because I can't open it.
Yeah. Give me a second. I got it right here. I got like a clip version of it. So I come down, I find 0.772. I then add 50% to that, or 0.5, excuse me. And then I should get a variable of this. So I'm going to just kind of zoom in on this formula so you guys can see it just a little bit better. So kind of building that formula for z-scores is going to help us. Now, this is a shortcut I use so I don't have to look at the forms or the process. I say process, excuse me. So creating this formula will help you understand probability and allow us to see what the distribution looks like. And so having the three variables, X, mu, sigma, they turn into that z-score variation, right? Now, just like that football player that kicks the field goals 45% of the time, I can see that and match that to the z-score value. So what I'm going to show you right now is essentially your fact checker or reverse lookup. Norm.s.inverse, and you'll just select the probability and it'll go through it. So in this, being able to see it from a reverse standpoint will make sure that we have our calculations correct on that end. Is there any questions from you guys as we're building this? I think getting more theory is going to help you with this, but understanding that essentially, if we understand our probability, we can use this to determine our efficiency. Once we figure out whatever our yield rate is or quality rate, we then can use that to judge efficiency as we continue
Zach,
to draw scores and standardize it. Yes, Adrian.
hey Zach, can you get the Z formula again for Excel? Can you hover above?
Right here, dude.
Yeah, I got
Okay.
having some issues with mine.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second. Equal.
Yeah, no problem.
Zach, how do we find out sigma again?
Right here.
Yeah, the equation. I'm trying to figure out like how did that.
So are you looking for sigma or are you looking for Z score? The Z score?
I think I'm looking for sigma because I understand the formula to find z.
Okay.
It's in that formula, and I'm figuring out trying to think how do we come up with sigma?
Yeah,
Was
that's
it
fine.
smart?
It's for this one, right? So how did we come up with sigma? Well, that's the values we were given, right? Now, what's cool about this is I can kind of pick this apart a little bit to help us out. So he has these variables here, right? He's got his Z variable, Z equals X minus mu. We help that and we understand we find a process Z value of 2, right? We then can find and judge the effectiveness of it. Now, the standard deviation that he found was by collecting his pizza scores and then doing the standard deviation formula, and then that came to 2, so that's why we used it in the equation. Now, you didn't see all that back end stuff, but you can use that for your pizza delivery, right? So he's
Got
gonna
So
collect.
sigma is the standard deviation number. That's what I was trying to derive
Yeah,
from.
sigma is the standard deviation of a sample.
Got it.
Yeah, does that help out?
Perfect. You said the keyword, the standard deviation, and it rang a bell.
Yeah, great. I want to make sure. Is there any other questions? It's okay. Don't feel embarrassed at all. I'm happy to help. How many of you guys have learned a whole lot tonight? Yeah, definitely.
Learning a ton.
Yeah. I try to be really down to earth with this stuff because it is really impactful when you put it into practice.
So is the plus always going to be 0.5, or are we using that as an example because it's easy to understand at this level?
Yeah. So
I-
can you rephrase or can you ask that question again? Maybe rephrase it just a little bit so I got what you're asking.
So, for example, on all of our previous examples, we find Z, and then we look at the chart, and then we found the P, and then we added the 0.5. Is it always 0.5? Why are we doing 0.5? Because we know where we are on the graph, and the other half is the 50%.
Yeah,
Is that not, is that always the case?
no,
Or is it,
no.
no, it doesn't seem like it could be. So are we just using that because it's easy to help understand the concept better?
Yeah, so if we look at, let me find what the original table looked like that I was going to give you guys, okay? It's actually in your file under statistics.
Okay,
Yeah, but like I want to show you this file right here. There were two files. So there was a plus side, which you're seeing here, and then there was a negative side. To kind of help you understand the concept better, I wanted you to understand the mathematical practice of it.
okay.
So one of the reasons we added 0.5 in that is because when we looked at what ours chart looked like, it was from 0 to whatever z value it is. It still applies on the back end. You would just do the subtraction of it to find what the p value is. Here,
Okay.
this allows us to see the positives and negatives all together. However, this isn't what industry uses. So to prepare you better, this is going to be under, I found it. It's on the zip file. It's called statistical tables, and I believe it's either it's P table in there.
Got it.
Yeah. But what I showed you guys to do it, how to do it this way, bypasses that method completely, as long as you have the formula. And I can make sure you guys have this document too with these examples in here too, okay?
Now, I understood the formulas so much faster, but I didn't, the one thing I was really struggling with is why we were always using 0.5.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure there are situations where it's not always going to be 0.5. It's just that's our example to make it easy to understand. Is that right?
Yeah, and the only reason I'm
Okay.
doing that is for this chart right here and accounting for this area right here that's not identified on the chart.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because that was a talking point that I wanted to discuss too. So thank you. So in tonight's session, we talked about a few different things, right? I showed you how to understand data, right? Looking at this pizza case study, identified the direction we would go with it from a continuous improvement standpoint. I then talked about the mean and standard deviation, both ideologies of central limit theorem, allowing us to, as Six Sigma professionals, understand what the baseline performance metrics are. We then use the Pareto analysis to identify where were our most taxing areas, right? And in the videos, it goes into the cumulative average as well, so you can understand that more in detail as well as self-paced. But going through from here, we identified that our issue revolved really around late deliveries. We could see that in the data, and we can see it on the chart a lot more effectively. Using descriptive statistics, we can then go into the delivery times. From the delivery times, we just grabbed a sample of the 30 data points for delivery, and you guys were so kind to help me and provide that. That produced a range variable of 64 data points, with our lower control limit of being 8 minutes and our upper control limit of being 72 minutes. We then found the average, and then we found the standard deviation, or the space in between our variables. Like, I wish there was a way I could rotate this. And so you could see it from that 90-degree perspective. So when we do this, this becomes our control chart basis, or X chart, if you will. And we can see our variables in there. We can assign what that average limit is. And we can see how it dictates through the data. Now, our job in Six Sigma is to control that variation. So we could even use our Z-score calculator here with our data. And calculate what our probability is in our Z-scores from there just by inputting and finding. We know what our standard deviation formula is, and we know what the standard deviation is. We know what our mu is because we found it also in that variable. We then have our Z-score calculator, which we just put that basic formula, x minus mu divided by sigma, in there, and that allows us to understand probability. I then showed you how to calculate it, but also look at the documentation. Now, somebody had brought up, I believe it was Marianne, brought up a really good point that as you're looking at your distribution, your data will not always have this. It could also very well look like this. The only difference is the distribution will tell you what's in there. If you don't see this, just assume that this is 50% of the data, and that's why we utilize that number. So 50% here, and also 50% here. This goes to that Z-score in question that we're looking at. So in tonight's session, this was an overall success. I think our heads are hurting, but I also think we learned a lot. So you guys, I'll have this uploaded in the basic statistics program course, but I wanted to give this to you guys as well, as you would have access to it. And we'll just call this pizza business case. Some good exercises I would recommend are going through and doing the mean and standard deviation. However, if you're already fluent with it, maybe just learning the shortcuts. Practicing with building this and learning this trick. Holding control or command to do a Pareto chart. That's going to help you. We could have also gone into that case study and did a qualitative collection of data. I just did the one just because it was easy to do off the top of my head, that I had visually saw. But we could use this data to collect information as well on our case studies. We then have our X chart, which we kind of created here, where we said, okay, we want to investigate what the next 30 delivery times are. Boom, we did that. We found what the range and the spread of the data is. From there, we do the Z-scores and we understand efficiency. In Thursday's class, we're going to talk about improvement and comparing that using t-test, okay? But yeah, super good session tonight, guys. So I'll kind of stop the video. But yeah, any questions about anything? Let's hang out for a couple minutes. Yeah, it's pretty flexible. But I really think you guys are learning a lot and learning a lot of value here. Yes.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, what's up?
Not about this. about the homework for today. So the first thing was that project management test. And when I entered my information, my answers, the first question didn't give a score. It didn't say it was correct or incorrect. And then of course, how do we know how we did on the test? Because there's the fill in the blank answers.
Oh, yeah. So I set that up. So what I wanted to do Thursday was discuss it. So when you look at the online program, it's the March cohort one, right? And then tonight we have project management. It also talks about regression analysis and common challenges. So the quiz, oh yeah, that's right. I set this up because I wanted to see what it would do on, since this is a new platform, I wanted to see if it would show me the statistics of like graphs of the students. So I set it up this way because I wanted to input that data so I could judge where we are project management wise already. So I can adjust the class and tailor it to it, okay?
Oh, okay, because I wasn't sure because the first question had 3 out of the 4, and I didn't know if it didn't give me a correct thing there because it didn't recognize that that was the
No.
right answer.
No, this is just so I can see what the students' grades were, and I can see if you guys had inputted the right information. And with the critical thinking questions, it also sees if you're kind of understanding where we're going at this level, you know, being in this leadership level.
Okay. So how do we find out? Are you going to tell us how we did individually? Like,
Now, I'll probably talk
somehow?
about it on the last day. And we'll talk about like
Oh.
nobody fails this class, so like don't I like it's kind of a pass or fail. I say nobody fails it. I have failed a couple people for like just not showing up or you know just like crazy stuff. But my goal in here is to grade your projects after you present it, right? We'll critique them, right? And make sure they fall under the body of knowledge requirements. Then I give you guys one test, and then you'll have access to the different certifications on your account after I release them to you. So like none of that happens and you won't really receive anything like certification wise until the end of the program.
That
Unless
makes a
you're
lot of
doing,
sense.
yeah. And like I had kind of told you guys, this is the first class where students are getting this kind of self-paced material, and I'm really trying to experiment with it. So like I appreciate you guys being flexible with me. And of course, a lot of this is me trying to break this down to you, and you have these videos as components and lecture material as well. So that way in these sessions we can have the meaningful discussions, and then some of those like monotonous, you know, teaching points, they kind of just become you know, kind of standard knowledge for you guys.
I can tell you that, at least from my perspective, it has been really helpful to have the videos to refer back to, and like the statistics ones, the analysis ones, I watched them all several times, but then we were also covering it in class. So having that repetition has been really helpful, and then having the self-paced combined with the class, I really appreciate that format, and it's really helpful in the learning process for me.
I thought so, and like literally like this has been, you know, a continuous improvement activity for myself too, is finding out ways to do this that's cost saving so I can reduce the cost of these programs, right? Because uh like the value you guys will get out of this program and having that one-on-one, and plus, you know, black belt level and like even green belt level, I question, should it be self-paced, should it not? Because having that instructor led portion gives you that facilitate like that just exposure from, you can tell I've been in different industries and I've talked about how it applies. So, I think that that's also a component too.
Yeah, I think it needs to have both, just
Definitely.
especially I think at the Black where it's so much of a higher standard. Like when you have that designation, there's an expectation with that. And I don't know if you could really get that level of comprehension or understanding from just self-paced.
I agree. I've gone through and I've done this through, I mean, what, 15 years, 12 years? Yeah, around there, 12, 15 years. I've been a practitioner for about then, and then I've been a master black belt trainer for 2017. I only started doing this with the college, pretty recently within the last couple years. But like my main job is going out in industry. So like, I'll do these like programs for pre-hire development, or sometimes they'll have it where they'll ask me to come in and pre-hire train people to see if they make the cut for employment. And so like that's really cool to be a part of that too. But like so I see it from different aspects as well. So I try to do as much for completion rates, but it's also I want to provide a quality education product for you guys that's endorsed by industries.
Just because of my work schedule, I try to kind of batch my homework, and I noticed that you're keeping us at a certain pace, that we're not allowed to work too far ahead, which is somewhat understandable, I guess, for the week. But like I'm looking at Wednesday's homework. I already watched those videos. I just couldn't check them off yet.
Yeah.
Because I try to do a lot of my homework on those 2 days that I have a break in my schedule.
So
are you gonna
yeah, so
open up the
this
rest
is
of the week?
yeah, what I'll do is I'll open that up for you. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It just kind of broke up on my end, so I thought you were done. So the goal is tomorrow I'm meeting with the staff. We're coming together. They're helping me input all of my like database information that I would give to you as like a zip file, like, hey, watch this, this, and this. But now we're bringing it into this platform. So you'll see more stuff on there tomorrow. And I'll give
Okay.
you 100% access. It's just you won't have access to the exam until the last day of class.
Of course, that makes sense. I hope that I'm not monopolizing all the questions. I'm sorry if other people have questions too.
No, dude, if you have questions, chances are people have the same question, right? And plus, this allows me to also look back and maybe answer like FAQ things on the website and have like the people put this together for that. So that way these questions are answered. So it's not something that like staff are kind of tied up with. And usually I try to answer all this stuff during class too.
Well, if you need questions, I always have lots of questions.
It's fair.
I seem to have an endless supply of questions.
That's okay.
Hey, Zach, is there any comic books I can get you for some extra credit or something?
Yeah, man. No, the wife says I have to stop. So no, actually, uh, I have like this is what I love doing. I get a lot of this stuff through like people donate it to me too. That's been really cool. Like I think I told
Credit? Is that what we call it?
yeah, that's what I probably tax purposes, that's what we would call it. But like the shit, let me